And at that point, we'd like to take roll call of the attendees. Would you handle that, please, Ms. Merrill?
Bart Kahn,
Here.
Pam Merlo, here. TJ McLaughlin, here. Doug Shepherd,
Here.
Casey Kelly, here. Dan Vergara,
Here.
Darrell Lewandowski, absent.
Yeah, no, and we know, we heard from Mr. Lewandowski, we know he's out of town. Okay, next item is, we have a quorum, and so we're off and running tonight. The next item is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
Make a motion. Jim?
Okay. You have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Okay, all in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. So the motion passes by voice vote. And then we get to item 4 of this evening's meeting, which is public comment.
Yeah, I do.
Anyone
We have an extra copy of
recognize?
the agenda, there was a one window.
Okay, no public comment. We'll move on to item 5, which is correspondence. And there's a couple things going on. I'll mention them and then we'll see what I've missed, right? We have the planning and zoning news from January of 2014 and Michigan Planner from January, February of 2014. And then we also received, I guess I call it a notice or a communication from Northfield Township. And they've made an announcement about an amendment to their master plan. And it's a pretty simple one-page note, very straightforward. Planning commissioners have it. It's probably available here in the office. Someone wants to see it, and they make some adjustments to their land use map in the vicinity of North Territorial and US 23. And all this going on. So, Salem Township has, I believe there's a 42-day comment period, and the question would be, would there be a need for any commentary from Salem Township from the Planning Commission? And I would like to propose that there is no need, I see none, and as long as the other commissioners are in agreement, then the planners or, our zoning people could comment if it was felt to be necessary, but I think we're saying here the Planning Commission is very comfortable with just receiving this information. So that's where we are. Okay. That's the sum of the correspondence, right? And nothing else, Ann? Okay. We don't have a public hearing, and so now we move on to item 7A. It's a new business item, and it's a conference with Mr. Lacius, okay. Related to the former airport property, so you want to talk.
Yeah,
I'd like to hear what you have in mind.
sure. I'd like to pass these out. The first, introduce myself. My name is Jim Blasius. Live in Northville Township, been there for about 25 years. Apologize, I didn't realize how many would be on the commission. These are just a simple, let's pass out for, yeah, I have one for everybody. They're just not all in color. Try to make a couple copies on the machine, so.
Thank you.
Just black and white. Anyway, first I'd like to thank everybody for giving me a few minutes this evening. This is kind of an exploratory piece for me as well. I've been looking at property in the area, for personal use in different ways. And when I came across the airport, being a pilot, of course, it became very interesting to me to say, wow, Salem Airport, I used to land there, and when I was back, I was flying, privately. So that kind of sent me into the, looking into it to see what it would take to reopen the airport, and an airport on its own really doesn't have a lot of good economic use. It's hard to generate enough capital really. There's revenue out of it to really have it make sense, and so I was looking for other uses as well. Spent some time talking to commercial pilots, and, you know, we kind of came up with an idea of, you know, reopening the airport, doing some condominium-style hangars in there where we'd actually be able to sell off pieces of the property, so that any individual could come up that was a private pilot and have their own private hangar that was there on the property. We haven't really looked at numbers, you know, as far as how many are there. And the other piece of it that I was looking for, if you look at the second page in there, we just generally drew out a section of what we would do. Is, you know, in the front portion of the property, you know, create some new hangar space up in there. There would be some tie-down area in the back of the airport. You know, repave the one runway, keep 9 and 27 as a grass strip. And then the other piece that I want to propose is that I ride motorcycles. Right? I want to put in a personal track to be able to ride as part of my, you know, that's really what sent me on the mission. Was I was out looking for a piece of property that I could just, you know, have my family and I to be able to ride on. And you know, when I saw that piece, I said, well, there's a great big sound barrier up there. You know, I know it would be used for limited personal use. And I thought it, you know, might fit well, if anywhere in, you know, the township or anywhere would be, you know, somewhere that you've got, you know, a high expectation of noise. Even though, you know, motorcycles today are not really as noisy as they once were viewed. So those are the two general pieces to it, and I, you know, wanted to present it to the commission tonight and say, is this something that would be, you know, that you would entertain? If so, you know, we would explore further and, you know, bring in, you know, more sophisticated drawings and what have you.
Interesting.
Who's the land currently owned by?
I'm sorry?
Do we know who the land is currently owned by?
It is, who owned the landfill?
Over the past 10 years, I think. like,
Holloway?
different-
Holloway. It's, I guess, the grandson of Mr. Holloway.
His grandson.
It's a gentleman who lives out in Montana, that's all I know. Last name's not Holloway, but, so.
So that's probably.
Right, I mean, anyone can, yes, yes.
Are you aware of whether the person wants to sell it or not, or?
Yeah, no, it's for sale. There's a.
Oh, it's for sale.
Yeah, there is a
Okay.
sign up on it, and I've
Oh,
spoken
okay.
with them, and I guess there's a couple other people that are looking at the land and, you know, what their use is, or whether that's reality or not.
What are they asking for the property? Do you know?
Well, they're listing it at 99.12 acres, and the listing price on it is $600,000.
Approximately 100 acres.
Yeah, it's kind of an unusual piece because, you know, of the layout from the landing strips that were there. The north-south runway has an extension that looks to be about a 20-acre piece that kind of goes off to the north, just to extend the strip. And then there's also a piece that goes east-west that also extends out of it, so it's not rectangular. You know, fairly well surrounded by, you know, farmland, and I'm not sure whether the earthworm was put in on behalf of the railroad or who did that, but I think it was really probably more at the airport side when they, probably acting as a sound barrier is what I'm guessing that was initially installed. There's a pretty big earthworm there. But, you know, tonight to me was really just to say, any big objections?
I have a question for you. The condos, you mentioned condos, what does that entail? You were saying you sell off individual condos for pilots?
Well, you know, the initial thought was, we said, okay, let's put some hangars in here. Okay, how do you draw people? Because you do have other airports around.
Mm-hmm.
And if you own your own airplane and you're able to own your own hangar, you know, then, so we would develop it under, you know, I guess bring a presentation to you as a PUD with the condominium concept, meaning there would be individual deeds for the hangars, just like if you go into a condo complex. And so you could buy your hangar, and I could buy my hangar, and someone else could buy theirs, and, you know, do the improvement scope that they want. You know, within that, obviously, then we have, you know, a revenue source to maintain the airport, and So, and that's just, you know, the concept, you know, to me, truly I came out, I was looking for somewhere to go ride my motorcycles. I said, look, I'll buy a piece of farmland, I'll buy 100 acres of it. And, you know, as we looked around, and I live right at 6 Mile in Sheldon, I said, I want something that's relatively close, so after work, I can come out ride with my kids. And so then when I started looking at the pieces of land, I saw this, and again, truly, it was, not that I've ever developed an airport. I'm a pilot, I fly into a lot of them, and I know, you know, to me, kind of looking down and seeing Salem, you know, on the top of the hangar was always kind of interesting, right? You know, it's like, hey, there's Salem, you know. And that was kind of my vision again, was to bring that feeling back. It's kind of a countryside airport, but you know, obviously we would, you know, that's the quick presentation of the concept. So.
Great stuff to bring forward. This is what we're here for. Is it still zoned so that it could be used as an airport? Is that still alive, or is there something that?
I can answer that if you like. It's zoned industrial, but airports are not listed as a permanent activity in the zoning ordinance simply because the airport's been closed for so many years that it didn't appear like that was any kind of an option. Though it was planned for future industrial type development of some sort. The reason why the gentleman mentioned coming through the plan unit development process is that's the only way that the mix of activities he's proposing can be reviewed by the township, is bringing all that together through the PUD and proposing it as a complete package.
Are airports listed anywhere right now?
Not in the ordinance.
So if you, as you work on the development concept, would this be like a private airfield, or would this be open to general aviation in the way you're thinking of the concept? I'm trying to understand, you know, just how
Well,
active
all-
and commercial you.
Yeah, all airstrips, even when they're private, you know, unless it's on your own personal land, like you could have yours if you had enough property and you could label it as private that people couldn't come and go. We would promote this to say, you know, it was what they would call a private strip, but it would be open to the public. So you would get, you know, potentially traffic that would come in, but it's primarily going to be, you know, traffic from the airport. And I'm not sure how many hangars we think we could get into there, but you know, first concept that we kind of sketched out, we thought it would be somewhere between 20 and 25, you know, hangars that were, you know, single hangars or double hangar if somebody wanted to. So.
I'd encourage you to look at, there's a lot of hobbyists out there doing this type of thing with racetracks. Private racetracks, people leasing or purchasing garage space. They keep their track car there, they go there on the weekend, they take it with it, and there's business models out there that really have worked. This is just, you know, airplane wings instead of tires, I'm guessing. But,
Right.
you know, I encourage you to look at
Well, and I've kind of looked at some of those as well too. I mean, I race cars, I race motorcycles, and I've done it my whole life. And I looked at Grattan Speedway is for sale right now. That's on the other side of the state, right? And really to develop a speedway, I mean, it's such a mammoth undertaking that really it's beyond me, my knowledge, my scope of it. And really, the type of track that I'm talking about for private use would be, I don't know if anybody here went to Ford Field over the weekend, saw the Supercross that was down at Ford Field. No, okay.
Sorry.
It's somewhere, you know, it's usually put on like 5 acres. It's a relatively small track, and you know, at some point in time, I know in, you know, my life, I look at it, I say, well, I'm looking for something that, look, I can ride on it, I don't bother anybody, and at the end of the day, you know, I get too old to ride, my kids are no longer interested. You know, you put another hangar, you do something with it, or you know, at least the property has a reason and a purpose for it. Go buy 100 acres of farmland, that's all you're ever going to do with it is farmland or ride a motorcycle on it. And so it's pretty hard to justify that. This becomes a business proposition and a hobby almost, because I do fly, you know, I own a plane. I keep my plane currently out at Oakland Pontiac. You know, of course I would move it over here.
As far as getting approval for an airstrip, a landing strip, and everything like that, it has to be, would we say it would have to be within industrial?
Well, this would be through the plan unit development process, which is a zoning district of its own. The application would be a rezoning from the current district to PUD, and it would also include what the ordinance calls an area plan or a concept plan for the overall development of the site. So you'd be reviewing both together, holding a public hearing on both together, and recommending those to the township board. And then ultimately would be the board decision on whether or not to accept it.
So this is something you'd certainly want to do before you ever make a purchase.
Obviously, that's something you have to address, but then.
There's a bit of gamble, I guess, that goes on, and that's kind of why I'm here tonight. If truly, several of you stood up and said, I'm totally opposed to the motocross track, totally opposed to it, I'd walk out of here and say, thank you for your time, and go do something else somewhere else. This is close, I think it fits. I feel like I'd be giving something back to the community, bringing it, taking, as you look at I just gave you copies of what it is, and you see it's been run down, it's been abandoned since I think 82 or 86, somewhere, and I think it would be a nice use, right? It would be something that would give back to the community, recognition that there's an airport here. For residents who may want to come in, there may be some business that's generated out of it at the local level.
As much as we all have opinions, we just try to uphold the ordinance. So, I mean, you follow the process and you go through and you go from there. And that's where I'm at.
Well, I guess that's what I was looking for tonight, was it, because, the ordinance, I think, provides the ability to do this. But it's a question of, do you guys think it's a good idea for the community, right? That's why we start here, and again, if it's something that, at the end of the day, you as a group decide that it's not a good idea, or not something that I think you generally think, then, then I walk away and I go do something else. But if you do, then, I would take the next step forward and bring you back a more formal plan that would say, okay, here's more what it looks like, here's a better layout than something that I did on a PowerPoint presentation. And, and ask you to, take a little, spend a little more time, maybe put it in front of you, give you time to send it out to the community, or, whatever. But, I'm trying to minimize, my economic exposure, as well as, wasting of your time if it's really not something that is.
Whatever's,
Can I ask a question or two?
I think whenever it's convenient on it.
Yeah, no, I wanted to just ask, have you looked at the master plan for the Hamlet area? The Salem Township has?
Well, I have it.
Okay, because all I was gonna say is, this is kind of our Bible that guides things. It's not rigid, because planned unit development is the type of development that's envisioned for the Hamlet area. And to me, it would be the quality of the proposed use and how it takes into consideration the environment around it and the benefits it brings to the community that would be the key factors in evaluating a proposal. And I know the history here, right? I was probably 15 or 16 when I was out at the airport, and had a couple plane rides and stuff. So I can understand that, and I know there's community airports in Plymouth Township, right, and up at New Hudson, and they're around, and I know from knowing a few people that have airplanes that they're always looking for places to keep them, and they're convenient and such, and so this has the benefit of being located much closer to a large population base than sticks.
Yeah, I think for me, there's truly a lot of value. Obviously at some point in time doing something with the property. Right? I don't think the township wants it to stay vacant. Because that all, a well-done development does add back to the community. An airport is something that's pretty unique. Never in my life did I think that I'd ever get involved in, redeveloping an airport or building one. Other than maybe when I flew into one saying, hey, it would be kind of nice to have my own property. But, when I went on this quest of trying to find a piece of land that made sense, that didn't, that I could ride motorcycles on and still have a future with the land, you know, and other than farming. And we came across this piece. And I looked at it and I said, wow, that would be kind of fun. Wouldn't that be cool to bring back the airport, you know? And that was really kind of where I started and spent some time on it. And I've talked to the FAA and the DOT, and, you know, from everything that I found, there's nothing that's, you know, that won't permit it. But again, you know, it would have to go out in front of everybody. And
What's your, oh, I'm sorry.
I just have one last question, and the motorcycle use you're envisioning might be, it's incidental, not maybe not primary, but are you thinking it's paved motorcycle use, or?
no, it's dirt. It's just dirt. You know, it's just a motocross track, you know, that would be there, and again, like it would be on roughly 5 acres. You know, something that's, you know, maintained and used for private use. You know, as I sit here today, I would envision one of my airplane hangars having, you know, my motorcycles would sit on it, and, you know, I would come out on Saturday afternoon and go for a ride as opposed to going to,
Just leave the dirt floor in a hangar,
yeah,
flip on the lights.
and go from there. Like, if it was big enough, they do that, right? There are some pretty big hangars out there that they do that in now. Like, it's pretty old, it gets pretty tight, so.
Okay, those are my questions. Did you have one?
Just a quick one. What do you envision, you know, your commitment and participation in this process, and how you plan to begin it if people were to say this is not a bad idea?
Well, in earlier life, I was a builder and developer. I developed subdivisions and did some commercial property, and I've now been out of that for about 15 years. So, you know, I would have a very first-hand involvement in it, and, you know, everything from the design to, you know, working on the engineering to the actual physical construction of it. That's kind of my passion, right? I grew up around it, and, you know, I'm a pilot. My son's a pilot. He's studying, you know, currently he wants to become a pilot for FedEx. I don't say that because I kind of laugh. I keep saying, don't you want to fly people around? He's like, I don't want to fly a bunch of people, and, you know, all I do is complain. Boxers never complain, right? So, you know, to me, this is kind of like somebody who builds a golf course, right? Why do you do it? Well, you know, it's questionable whether you make money on it or not. But, you know, if you bring something back to the community, I still drive around with my kids and I go, I built that building, I developed the subdivision. And, you know, they're pieces of pride, right, that you know, that never go away. Be able to say, you know, everybody I've told to, I says, hey, I'm looking at the Salem Airport, I'd like to try to reopen it. And they're like, you're kidding, oh, that's great, oh, that's awesome. And I've talked to, you know, I know a couple of pilots that I've seen Starbucks in the morning, right, and they think it's, you know, they love it. They go, hey, we're in, we want one, you know, we got our own planes. So, you know, to go develop a, you know, a motocross track, anybody can go do that with a bulldozer or a backhoe, right, and put it somewhere. To take it and make it a piece of something that's pretty unique and develop the airport and say, hey, it's close to home. You know, I can move my plane from Pontiac out here to Salem. I could be here from 5 minutes from 7 minutes from my house. You know, those are personal appeals to me. Does it make wonderful economic sense? Not according to my wife, but, you know, it's just something that, you know, I've got an interest in it, and, you know, I'm willing to pursue it, I'm willing to invest time in it, but you know, I also want to make sure that I'm not swimming up, you know, a great big stream that, you know, that I've got people on the planning commission, because I think it's well within the power, or, you know, the zoning, right, to get it done if everybody would like to see it, but, or the majority of everybody would like to see it. But if the majority is not interested in it, then, you know, then I don't want to, I'm not trying to force anything on the community, because, you know, I don't want to be the bad guy out there. I'm hoping that people look at this as a good thing for the community. You know, and then I would be, you know, a very instrumental part of it. So.
Dive more into
Only when the chair.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, just a couple comments. I didn't go to the motocross on Saturday. My hot water heater burst, but my friends went. So I understand what you're talking about. For this particular parcel, you know, the commission has had over the years, a couple people come in and give proposals. You know, back a number of years, I don't think anybody that's on the commission now was a part of any of those original discussions. Well, what I would ask the applicant is a couple questions right off. You said the motocross would be private, just for you, your family, not open to the public, not having events, anything of that nature?
Absolutely not. Yeah, just from a liability standpoint, a maintenance standpoint, but you invite or you bring events in there. It's not a moneymaker. This is really about, recreational use.
Yeah,
for
and I
my
mentioned it
family.
because it's an important issue, because if you were going to open to the public, that opens up a whole new scenario of information,
Mhm.
How many people are coming in, the parking, the ingress, the egress, several other factors. The second one is, as I made mention to other people talking about the site, at one point, other types of uses were discussed regarding the site. And what I would mention to you is, have you considered other types of activities for that site? At one point, some people were talking about perhaps some office, small offices of a character that's similar to the little hamlet area. Again, utilizing a clientele that perhaps would have needs for an airplane, would like to live in a community that's isolated, and yet still has contact, technology contact, etc. And some of that at one point was felt that it might be, a good thing to look into that. Whatever you look there, when you go to the master plan, as the chair has made reference to, you're going to see a compatibility with all the parcels in this community as they relate to this, hamlet. We're talking character, we're talking scale, we're talking interrelationships and things of that nature. So as you go through your plans, my thought is to keep in mind maybe a little wider spectrum of uses that potentially could take place on the site, be advantageous for you, be advantageous for the community, could be an interrelationship of that parcel with the rest of the community. What I'm thinking is maybe let your mind, encompass a few other things that could be advantageous economically, or to a land use that would be very agreeable with the concept of this community.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. Some of the things that you just mentioned, we have talked about, and there's a lot of legwork on my part yet that really needs to be done. I mean, I looked at, what's the ability to put a septic system on the property, right? So if you get into something that has, greater septic needs, is it an engineered system that needs to go out there? Is there a place that perks? Is there, what have you? We had talked about, potentially, could it be an airport housing community? Could you go somewhere down that? And the first negatives that really came back is everybody's got to come from the west. You're not going to really pull people, or it's much more difficult for them to come from the east, just because you got, gravel roads right there and around the landfill. Doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It's just, to me tonight was come in to say, I'm looking at the expression on everybody's face and see if everybody looks like, hey, this is exciting, and we'd love to see something happen out there, or where did this guy come from, right? And I'd love to hear ideas from everybody, because hey, I've been looking at this for 2 weeks and talking to everybody that I know and coming up with the ideas, and this is a bit different from when we met 2 weeks ago, right? And I was thinking, well, we open the airport, maybe put some storage on it, what have you, and then it turned into, well, why would you put storage if you're going to store something like out of airplanes? That seems more appropriate, Maybe there's a mixed use that goes in there. But at the end of the day, look, I was looking for a piece of land to be able to ride a motorcycle on with my family. If that doesn't work, if that's a deal breaker, then the rest of it doesn't really matter to me. It's a pretty important part of the whole development to me personally.
Anyone else? All right, well, I guess we say thank you for kind of laying this out for us. As the development work would have to put anything specific together, would need to interface with professionals here, that handle zoning
Sure.
and planning and such. And they would be the keys to figuring out what you would, if you wanted to put a PUD type proposal together, how you could start to, sketch the main elements and such of it, because it's a PUD process is kind of it can be a lengthy thing where you start off with very vague information and then you add a little bit more to it and more to it, and there's back and forth meetings with the professionals and such.
Has there been on that property, anybody on the planning commission here, proposals that have been brought in, things that you're really not interested in being developed over there? Has there been anything that, or that maybe that you thought was interesting and that you would have liked to see there? Fall through?
Personally, I think I'd be open-minded to hearing about anything that would breathe some life into it. I mean, anything would be better than a dilapidated, stagnant thing, and as long as it was abiding by our master plan, then I, for one, would be willing to hear whatever you brought to the table.
Okay, thank you.
I encourage you to pursue.
Thank you.
I mean, it's,
I've heard a big drawback was that people would go look at the property and it would take a lot of money to get rid of those airstrips and haul everything off, and it wasn't worth it, but you're not talking about having to do that, you're just redoing them.
Yeah, they still gotta get hauled off, but,
Okay, partial.
but I've done some preliminary numbers on it, and like I say, it's not something I get rich on, right, but it's kind of, it's one of those things that, at the end of the day, sometimes you do things in business that, or in life, that, you know, somehow we self-justify it, right? Why you buy the really expensive shirt or the expensive shoe, right, you find a way to justify it in your mind that it makes sense, and that's what this one is to me. It'd be something of, you know, a bit of passion that's in there, and redeveloping it. I got a son that flies, I fly, I ride motorcycles, I live in the community. I look at it and I say, I could make something out of this. So that's why I'm here tonight to, you know, cast it out there and see if it's,
just considering the, you know, industrial areas and all the automotive, but automotive tier 1 companies that are down there. The landing strip that's there, what's the biggest plane you could land in that right
well, currently there's about 3,500 feet that's there. You could bring it, you know, a twin engine, you could bring a turboprop in. Technically, you could land a jet there, but
now?
you would never get one.
At the right time.
Right, I mean, in an emergency, because jets require a lot more distance to take off than they do to land, actually, but, so, you know, it would be all prop type planes that would come in, and truly what you would find in there, you know, one of the pilots has got a Christian Eagle, right, he's got a biplane, that's like, oh God, yes, what I'd like to keep out there. You could bring things in like a turboprop Palladius would come in, a single engine plane. So you could have some, you know, Beechcraft Bonanzas, Piper Saratogas, you know, those type of things.
My uncle flew a Skylane.
Right, the Skyline would come in and out of there twice, right?
Yeah.
So, and you could, you know, the east-west runway is shorter. You know, initial concept is that's a grass strip. You know, whether it ends up getting paved or not, you know, then it's nice to have.
Put on an air show during Flag Day?
I don't know, my show is usually taking off and landing is enough of a show, but,
Taking off is no problem. Anybody can take off a plane.
you know, that's not true. Apparently, some people can take off with them too, but disappear.
If I may, I just wanted to get a confirmation. I'm looking at the master plan from the definition of the area of the Salem Hamlet, which is what one of those, that does include the airport property, does it not?
I believe it does.
Yeah, it looks to me like it goes to the northeast of the railroad tracks and encompasses that site, right? And then I look, you know, beyond that, and I see around that area to the north is agricultural residential, and then everything to the due south and east is industrial center type stuff, right? And so the trick is understanding how the airport fits in with what's adjacent, because and I don't see it as exclusionary, right? It doesn't have to. What it needs to do is provide some benefit to the community, and there might be a fine economic benefit as well as cleaning up an eyesore, quite honestly.
There's 3 or 4 full-time jobs right there.
Pardon me?
That there's 3 or 4 full-time jobs right
Well, yeah, that, and, you know, hopefully, not even more, that, you know, that it does self-support other businesses that are here, and, you know, everybody does like a little better tax base. I mean, I know it's not everything, but,
I think the planners have, specific language they use for the intensity of use on a parcel, right? And the trick would be to characterize your development that you would like to propose in a way where it would fit in with the intensity that should be there, right? And so it wouldn't be an extension of the much more intense industrial activity that's there, right? Because it's kind of in a buffer position. And so it could be, but I'm sure there's, commercial activity right across the railroad tracks, wagon chutes, is it? The Weingart's one of the two. Right, the wagon chutes, I believe, is lawn service and a few other things around, right? So,
Yeah.
It's not out of the question to do something like that from my perspective, and that's just my personal perspective, but it all depends on the type of proposal put together and how you get into it and see that it fits.
Maybe a comparison to how this parcel fits in around surrounding property as comparison to small airport in Plymouth and the one in New Hudson as well. There's also one out in Chelsea, right? Kind of what's around them,
Yeah, Plymouth has got a lot going on around it. It's, New Hudson's,
Oh, yeah.
much more isolated, so. Well, I appreciate everybody's time this evening.
Well, thank you.
You gave me an awful lot of your time, and I truly appreciate it, so.
Appreciate it.
Thank
We
you all.
hope to see you back here again.
I hope to be back. So, thank you.
All right,
Okay, thanks.
that was 7A. 7B is the Fox Hills Learning Center final site plan. So maybe we'll start with Mr. Pennington or Nanny, who kind of put together a summary, and then we'll look at maybe some of the other specific documents that have come through and see what business we have here.
Well, thank you. We have a report that's dated March the 10th this year. This is on the final site plan. You've seen previously the preliminary site plan for this project. This is a proposal for a new building on the site called the Learning Center, and an expanded area for short game out in the front. We did review the plan based on the current zoning ordinance, and we found that the building certainly and the short game area are in the interior of the site. They've made past adjustments to keep the short game area out away from the existing tree line and away from the existing front yard setback area. When we get to the final site plan, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty details. One of the details is exterior lighting, and we did note that they have a note on the plans about security lighting, but provided no detail on it. And so we made the note there that they do need to provide the detail of exactly what the security fixtures are going to be. You'll see decorative light fixtures on the plans that certainly meet the ordinance, but the security lights need to also be provided. The building elevations are on the plans and meet the ordinance. Height and building area and all of those requirements are met. We did review the parking and found that, as is noted in the plans, we feel that the existing parking lot is more than sufficient to provide space for this new addition. On the plans, you'll see a proposal for 20 spaces that refer to as deferred parking. They'll be built if needed in the future, and our zoning ordinance has a procedure for that if there are complaints or there are issues on the property that are documented, the township can require those spaces to be built at some point in the future. So they're on the plans, they've shown that they have space for it, they've shown a design that meets the ordinance, but they can be left as deferred parking rather than constructed at this point. And so we noted that section 6109 allows you as a planning commission to approve the arrangement that they've presented to you. There's no additional requirements for landscaping related to this project. There are a few trees that would be removed as part of the expanded short game area. They are cottonwoods and box elders that there's no need under the ordinance to replace those. So we just made the note that they're there. I know that the township engineer made a note in his review that the plan should show them to be removed, and I would concur with that. That it's clear they're part of the grading area for the short game, but it certainly would not hurt to show that they're being removed. They did provide the species and size and met the ordinance requirement for that. There are some outside agency approvals that are needed. I believe you have some of the information from some of the outside, from the county agencies. I think the key one is really a soil erosion control permit. That they will need to provide a copy of that permit to the township when it's been granted. The Water Resource Commissioner's Office has already responded, and there are no issues related to the road commission. They're not impacting road rights of way or changing anything about their access to North Victoria. So we found in general this plan is ready for your consideration. All necessary information has been provided, with the exception of that exterior lighting, the security lighting detail, which we note on the third page of the report. And the proposed learning center is consistent with the zoning ordinance and consistent with the Fox Hills facility as it is. So at this point, we'll be happy to answer any questions we have.
Well, thank you. Okay, what else do we have? We have in our package a letter from Stantec Consulting, our engineering services, related to this. It's, I think all the planning commissioners have, it's a 4-page letter. There's 27 points made, but many of them are not issues at all, and some are what I would characterize as minor typographical or adjustments to information. Has everybody taken a look through this to see if there's anything on this list that they consider critical? Because if you don't believe that we've handled all the critical issues, we probably shouldn't consider an approval of a final site plan. Maybe we all haven't read it.
Looks pretty straightforward. I think it looks
I
pretty
haven't
straightforward.
seen
Oh,
anything.
okay, well, I went through mine this afternoon, and, there's some that ask for comments from the township planners, and like we've heard from the township planners, and they've described, item 24, where there's a soil erosion and sedimentation control permit required during construction, but that's kind of a straightforward thing. There's a lot of, let's add a little more detail to the engineering plans and such. And then there was,
That permit that we're talking about in 24, that's just pretty much.
I'm sorry?
The permit that they're talking about in 24, that's the typical erosion fence you have to put up around the perimeter at a certain distance.
That's what I have.
So that's after physical action has taken place, not pen and paper.
Well, those permits are applied for as part of this process. So it's just, the key, I think, as an engineer suggests, is that they need to be provided prior to start of construction, and copies of all those permits need to be provided to the township, which is for our documentation.
Yeah, there's no reason we should invest in the permit until you've got a pass anyway, so, okay. Cart before horse.
And then there was item 22, which was the, no additional permit, and I think we had some information on that. There's an additional letter from Ms. Burnbeck related to this, and she's the registered sanitarian, so she's the county person on this, right? And when I read her conclusion, she made a few requests back on the 6th of March, and then wants to review the plan. But she, again, I don't, not to read anything into it, but I don't read any major objections that need to be satisfied. It seemed like simple adjustments to the specifications and such. Have you had a chance to review the letters that have come from from the county? It's pretty simple.
It's straightforward. These are mainly housekeeping items, and as the township engineer notes, these are details, minor corrections that need to be made. My suggestion would be to certainly make any, if you do consider approval tonight, to make it contingent upon the items being addressed in the engineer's letter and in our letter.
And I agree with that assessment, right? And so then, I'm just trying to do an inventory here, right? So I've gone through those materials, which are, hearing from the county related to the county things, hearing from the engineer, hearing from the planners. And then I just looked at the site plans myself to see if I can understand what they're doing based on the site plans. And there's, minor adjustments and more clarifications from what we saw maybe 3 months ago. It was December when we went through this. And I personally didn't have any meaningful concerns back then, if any. And so I'm interested in, I don't have questions or concerns to raise at this time. I'm interested to hear if the rest of the members of the planning commission are kind of with me, or they have some questions or some comments they'd like to make.
I did not
Ms. Kelly.
see anything that was of huge concern. I think that they're easy fixes, and as Mr. Nanny suggested, I think it could be posted as contingencies.
Same feeling, minor housekeeping things, make sure that permits are submitted and all that.
Outside, we can't prove.
Say.
No.
Okay, all right, so,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
you want to make sure to hear from the applicant, because they may have.
Okay, I'm sorry, yes. So now you've kind of heard from us, perhaps
Yes, I'd like
give
to
us
address
an update on the information.
I'm sorry.
Please, just
Yeah, I
explain
wanted
any
to
and
address the
everything.
lighting, that was submitted in the drawings that are fixtures that go above the doors. That's what we consider to be security lighting.
Okay, the note seemed to suggest there was something else.
Yeah, maybe
We
that
have
was too
pictures.
broad a brush, as a comment, but no, there won't be any big lights. The parking lots already has some lighting on it, so that's just security. So when someone walks up to the door, the light will come on. It'll be just decorative, but useful lighting. And of course, the soil erosion permit, we understand that's part of the process of getting that secured before we start building or moving any dirt around.
So the lighting just needs to be rewording.
Yeah, if you want a little
So,
amendment or a comment
additional
on that,
details.
we can do that. That's not a problem.
It was more intended just to say that, when somebody's leaving or coming, that there would be lights on, so that they could see when they're going to their cars for security reasons. So that's why we termed it security. But maybe you're thinking security is something else. But I do have pictures if that helps any. It's
And that was on the
little ways
engineering
on,
drawings.
I think,
We don't want to pick lighting fixtures, I don't think.
Okay.
I'll just comment that having lighting fixtures that don't send
Right.
much light beyond the property
Beams,
line
right.
is,
This is
to
just
me,
down,
I think that's an important
that's all it
concern.
is, just a downcast
So
for people to
exposed
see.
bulbs and stuff like
Right.
that, and I think our ordinance is very clear about that.
yeah, in that case, if all the light fixtures that are proposed are shown, they've done a very nice job with what they've shown. My suggestion is simply as part of your action would be to recognize that all of the light fixtures that are proposed are shown on the plans. There are no other fixtures proposed that aren't shown on the plans. So that solves that, because the ones that are shown there do meet the ordinance.
Right, so, okay, so when I looked at the plan, I looked at that and I saw the lighting fixtures there and I said, okay, these are like, we want to choose from these. And there's a large variety there, and I would think that personally, I look just glancing at them, some of them would always comply with our lighting requirements, and some might comply with our lighting requirements depending on how they're installed and how bright they are. And and such, right? Because some have exposed bolts and such.
Turn them upside down.
They're primarily downward, and so that part of it's okay, but there's still the whole business of how brightly you laid off the property boundaries and such.
No, but the plans do identify which fixtures from that set are actually proposed. And the ones they picked out would meet the requirements.
Is this facility like for younger people to get introduced to golf? Is that what it's for? Or?
Oh, it's just an additional building for lessons.
Mhm.
It can be youthful as all the way up. It's just more space for lessons, that's all it basically is.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so maybe I'm not, I need to ask a specific question. We had this long list from engineers on things that we think are minor and such. What I don't want to do is leave this with one, the engineer thinking that these are all important, the things he's listed here, and the applicant not being on a path to get to the same, to get to common understanding with the engineer and resolve all the issues on the list. And would you see any problem going through that process? I didn't think so.
No.
No.
Because again, I was just trying to put it in perspective, and I didn't see anything here that was like a complete redo of plans or anything like that.
Correct.
It's
Hope not.
okay. Anyone else here? Anything else from the applicant? Well, I think I'm open to a motion from someone here related to accepting this plan.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the final site plan contingent upon the engineer's concerns being addressed, minus the security lighting issue, which has already been resolved.
Is there a second? Mr. Can has the second. Okay. This can just be a voice roll. Or roll call, okay. Always defer to roll call, in that which case, I'd like us to have a roll call vote, and would you handle that for us, please, Ms. Morello?
Art Kahn, TJ McLaughlin,
Yes.
Pam Merlo, yes. Casey Kelly,
Yes.
Daniel Vergard,
Yes.
Doug Shepherd.
Yes. All right, motion passes, and we
Thank
have
you.
an approved site plan contingent, a couple things. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for item 7. Now we get to item 8, old business items, and we have a statutory requirement to review the master plan and determine if it needs changing or not on a 5-year period. And so we started that process with a discussion with the planning consultants back in December, I believe it was. And then we actually, in January, we talked in detail about a couple sections in the master plan, and it's shown in our minutes, but if I can quickly reference it, we went through Part 8 and Part 9, commercial land use and employment center land use. And we had some discussions there. And so tonight, what we wanted to do was have a discussion related to Part 10 of the master plan, which is special use areas. Those special use areas, there's 2 of them. One is the Hamlet area, which we were talking about in relation to the airport with Mr. Blasius. And then the other one is what's commonly referred to as the Urban Services District down near the junction of Gottfredson Road and M14. If I got that right, I think I did. Okay. And maybe what I would do, because we want to have a discussion, but we had a report from the planners, okay? And they this was December 13th, and everybody in the planning commission got this. Basically explained the 5-year review, and then talked about scope of anticipated updates, and then we had some discussion about procedure after that. But I just wanted to highlight what we talked about related to Part 10, which is the special use areas, which these were not must-dos, these were thought starters from the planners as to things we might consider, and I just wanted to remind everyone of what those were, and recognize that we can consider other things, and we could say, boy, we're very happy with what we have. But anyway, those 5 items, one was evaluate the goals, objectives, and policies based on any changing conditions and policy preferences, and then update text and maps as determined necessary. And then that would involve a lot of consultation with planning commission and other township officials. That would be very detailed review. We could review the sanitary sewer service district subsection based on changing conditions and update as necessary. We could review the mix of land uses, north and south of the interchange, and that along with the land uses subsection in the map 19, which is the development concept that's there, and see if we're happy with that. And then it talked about potentially limited changes to the Salem Hamlet area to make sure the text is up to date, and then also consider the feasibility of a way to integrate the Hamlet and Godferson Road urban service districts. And those were the 5 points made by the planners. And so at this point, I think what we want to do is we need what I really want to do is make sure we understand what's in the current plan. And so what the method we used the last time was we had, I believe, Mr. Nanny kind of summarize the key sections as we went through them, and allow the planning commissioners to ask some questions so that we're just sure we're familiar with what's here and how it's laid out, and then that'll allow us to reach our own conclusions as to whether we have, there's an impetus for detailed review and change. Because it's a cursory review and it's not necessarily the last time we'll talk about this. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Are you okay with that too, Mr. Neely? All right, please.
Well, Part 10 is, as was mentioned, is really focusing on 2 areas. So it's sort of split down the middle. The first half is focusing on the hamlet and laying out a vision for the future of the hamlet, laying out some definitive policy statements related to what's desired and what would be preferred to see happen in the hamlet. It emphasizes small-scale development. It emphasizes buildings built near to the street, walkability, interrelationships between properties where you can go from one to the next, just as we do right now in existing developed areas. So it looks at essentially building on what's already here. Don't reinvent the wheel, but grow what we have in a rural hamlet or village type character. And much of the first half is built around saying this is what we want to see happen. And you can see first in land use, it talks about the types of land uses that are desirable in the hamlet. And then beginning on page 70, 77, 78, 79, it starts to talk about more the physical characteristics. And you can see some graphics. And graphics are throughout this section, trying to draw a picture really for what the hamlet is like and what would be desirable to build on. So on page 79, you can see a graphic there of sidewalks and pedestrian scale street lighting, a little bit more developed than what we have currently along 6 Mile Road, but still in that rural character. And so that's really the key to that first half of the hamlet is painting a picture for anybody that is looking at doing work in this community, and also painting a picture for road agencies, like the County Road Commission. This is, as road improvements are proposed, that those road improvements can be done consistent with the vision for the hamlet, which is different than Road Commission standard rural road cross-section, for example. So this plan doesn't just affect potential developers, it doesn't just affect properties, but it also can be used to influence outside agencies like the Road Commission that have jurisdiction within the hamlet. The second half, starting on page 83, is a vision for the Goffredson Road corridor. I don't know, Don, do you want to talk about that? Because this goes back before me.
That area's been talked about a great deal. Just briefly, the first time the township looked at that area, as far as any kind of development, that was before I-96. Went through with just North Territorial Road intersection with Goffredson, et cetera. In the first plan, which came out, which was in about 1968, there was an effort by the Planning Commission, as agreed to by the board, to have that area designate a type of land use that was different than the rest of the community, basically commercial. That whole area, the intersection of Territorial and Goffredson, was shown as commercial. There was also a great deal of industrial shown up to the north of Territorial in that area. There was also a large amount of land shown as multiple residential. Over the years, that's been scaled back. The need for residential, the need for industrial, the amount of commercial has all been scaled back. But the kind of the vision of the community to designate that area, particularly after I-96 came in with an interchange, was to recognize the interchange, and of course the pressure or the need to have expressway-oriented uses was recognized. So to make sure that whatever happened there did not simply spread throughout the township, like spread along Goffredson Road or spread along North Territorial, a specific area was identified. And that was simply identified as the Goffredson I-94, I-96 urban service area. Distinct area. It had just over 1,500 acres. The area was designed to have services, designed to serve both freeway types of activities and the need of Salem Township to provide a certain range of services that would be technical or legal, by law. If we're ever challenged, we needed to provide those kinds of services. So we simply identified that area with specific uses that had a character and a scale. We use those words quite often, but to be served by, in essence, a sewer system and a water system, but not to extend beyond this boundary. The debate or the discussion might be, well, what kind of uses really should take place in that area now? Right after the area was developed, Johnson Controls was in town. They were owner of the southeast quadrant of that whole area. They were doing research and research-oriented activities, and we tried to put in uses that was complementary to that. There was some commercial along Goffredson Road. There was some land that was to be office types of use. There was also an area to be a conference center, again, compatibility with uses that we envision would come in and be accessory, shall we say, to Johnson Controls, and a few other minor issues in there. Preserving the natural resources, being the woodlands, the wetlands, stream corridors, isolation, buffer distances from uses that would be perhaps in close proximity that needed to be protected. But that's the basic core, the basic purpose, the basic reason for designating that area, to provide for the expressway, to provide the township's commitment to having to have certain kinds of land uses, but also in a fashion that we would be assured that it would not go beyond those boundaries. The rest of the community would maintain the environment, the character that it has right now, residential, open space, agriculture, things of that nature. And it was similar to the Hamlet district, two districts that stood alone, had particular types of land uses, had particular policies and things of that nature. One of the keys to both the Hamlet area and the urban service district is that a special type of development was really envisioned for that area. Not, shall we say, commercial or housing or whatever, but we looked at an interrelationship of all of those uses. We looked at distinct access points. We looked at pedestrian access threading its way through the types of uses that were envisioned there. We looked at an area that would be developed strictly by PUD policies and procedures, so that an area plan would come to the township, you would see what's happening on that site, and its interaction to the rest of the USD area. So you know that was quite vital to see how that was to develop. The ordinance was very specific, or say the ordinance, the master plan was very specific, and the zoning ordinance has documented a very kind of comprehensive area of design guidelines. When things develop in that area, it wasn't to be haphazard, it wasn't to be stripped, it wasn't to be anything except a comprehensive type of development that would have design guidelines talking about architecture, talking about the scale of development, talking about its relationship to each other, talking about the way parking lots were going to be put together, the pedestrian ways, as I mentioned. Stormwater management was envisioned, maybe not for each individual development, but overall it was looked at for stormwater management that might take care of more than one use in that area. Therefore, it would not be a square or rectangular type of basin that we sometimes see, but it was to be integrated within the entire development. So those were probably the most important reasons. And the key to it is if things develop, it should develop according to a character, a scale, and a series of design guidelines. That would make it special. That would set it apart from something at any other interchange, you know, in the state or the Midwest. It would be something that would have long-term value. Anytime you have quality, you have the relationships I've talked about, you have long-term value. Not quick, not something that's going to be an eyesore in a few years, not something that does not have internal compatibility. But those are the basic reasons for that area. And I think that it's something that has been accepted. It's got the uses that we need. It's got the buffering within that area to protect the new uses coming in from existing uses, residential, for example, that are in certain parts of that USD. I think it's a very good aspect. Putting that together was interesting. I don't want to go on. But this township was one of the first townships, not only in the state, but in the Midwest, to have this kind of concept. An urban service district that had urban services, a border that you were going to defend, and it would not go over that border. And now we're seeing various parts of the country coming up with this concept, specifically as we originally designed it here, an urban service district with design guidelines for a particular area of the community that would be established. It's almost an area where you want to promote growth. You know, you're saying, yes, growth is going to happen here. You're not trying to set up roadblocks. We've got a master plan that says, yes, commercial, yes, residential, yes, research, but not at the extent of destroying the natural resources. And that's what it's all about. May have gone a little bit too long, but it's a very special thing for this community.
Thank you. There's a lot to take in, you know, as I've read through this in detail probably 3 times over the last 4 years. You know. I've got a question, and it kind of relates to the concept of the pace of development, right? Because a community, in my view, have master plans that encourage a specific type of development, and actually take steps to try and help facilitate it. Or they can have other types where maybe the approach to the master plan is to define very tight bounds on the type of development that can be allowed in an area. And sometimes you do that in a way where it helps development proceed in a particular direction. Other times you sit down and say, hey, this is a free country, and maybe the tone is to outline the guidelines for things to fit in, and we sit back and wait to see what people want to do, right? And some, communities sometimes have problems they want to fix, and they really go out of their way to redevelop certain specific areas that might be blighted, or this or that or the next thing, right? I mean, is that not a common practice?
That is true, yes.
Okay. So, now, just to get that thought in people's minds, right? It's like, when I look at the pace of development in the Salem Hamlet area, I see it as going along at kind of a casual pace, and we're allowing it, and if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. That kind of tone is my personal opinion, what's there, and I'm okay with that, right? But I just want people to consider that is that what's okay for the community? Because if it isn't what's okay for the community, then we ought to talk about, what would you do to push specific concepts or make things more likely to happen, is all, right? And so I'm just kind of rolling along there, but I'm saying I'm okay with that, the way it is, and I wouldn't want to review it along those lines, to change the tone that's there in the Hamlet area. And then, when I look at the Urban Services District, and again, I'm just thinking about the pace that's there, the only question I have in the back of my mind is, I look at the map on page 111, and it has some pretty specific concepts outlined for the Urban Services District, where here, this is research and research applications, here's residential office park, and some of that is maybe pretty specific because you're trying to balance some existing uses with some development concepts for the future. And some of it may be just conceptual, where we talk about multiple family or such, and I just don't know, right? And the only question I ask is, as I look, and there's been no development there. And I don't see that as a particular problem, but I just pointed out, and I wonder if, and maybe the professionals can tell me, right? Because I understand it's a PUD zone, but are we trying to box things in too tightly with the way we've kind of scripted this out on our map? Or do these guys, the developers, all have license to do whatever they want? Not whatever they want, but to develop things in a broader sense and come to us with, PUD type proposals? And I guess I'd like your opinion on that. Are we being overly restrictive in what we've done here, or that are scaring them off, or what?
Well, I don't think that in particular what's proposed is scaring anybody off. One of the big issues is public services, sewerage and sewer, water, and how that would be provided. The Johnson Controls project would have provided it as part of that project. And much of the plan is based on, or reflects that character, that it would have been a sewer system provided as part of the development of that headquarters facility. That's not an option now, and Johnson Controls has decided otherwise. And so the question of how utilities are provided is an ongoing one. That issue is certainly is a big one in front of any developer seeking to look at developing property here in the urban service area. You know, one of the benefits of this area is that it does lay out a vision for urban scale land development. Many land developers find themselves in the very unenviable position of having to argue for a large upzoning of property. Say, well, you know, that shouldn't be agricultural, rural, residential anymore. It should be rezoned to something more, and having to fight every step along the way to be able to get what they want to be able to build what they want. In this case, the township said this is where this is appropriate, and so the key then is simply the phasing of that, and the phasing of that has a great deal to do with availability of utilities. The mix of land uses certainly is intended to create as Don said, a certain character. And we dealt with the residential office park piece of this before, in the piece north of 94, or north of M14. There's a scaling down of land use, kind of as you go from south to north. You know, the research application is a certain character. Residential office park is meant to be a little lower intensity activity, and then going into to residential. And then the same way, going from commercial to residential, similarly scaling down of activity, kind of on a range through that. Whether a particular piece of property is a particular developer wants to do, for example, a research park or a business park, that will be up to individual property owners and developers to come before you. And if somebody has a different vision, they can certainly present that to you, just as was done tonight by Mr. Blasius, to propose something else. I guess the one thing I would say is that there is not there are not many research or business park sites of large acreage like this one that's proposed here in the southeast quarter available and left anymore in the Metro Detroit area. Most of them had been developed, and so having a large piece of acreage that's planned for that kind of thing certainly has some benefits to it. But it requires a certain project to come down the pike and say we need that.
And I think maybe 12 years ago we thought that was the case.
Yeah.
That the one or the two possibilities fell through along the way.
Now, certainly, any of these properties could be developed. You know, the whole area could be developed by one developer if they chose. They can also be developed in pieces, because the plan sets out the overall vision. It says this is what we would like to see in concept. You know, it is essentially a conceptual development plan, I think, as it's labeled here. It's exactly what it's intended to be. Is to say this is the idea we have for this space, and obviously the details of particular projects will be worked out as they come before you.
Anyone else have some esoteric questions, kind of like the one I did, or even something that might be more pointed and useful?
We're still winning. This has been 5 years.
It's primarily conceptual at this point, right? I mean, both districts are conceptual of what we would like to see there. Until a developer comes along and makes a proposal, it remains conceptual, right? But the parameters are all laid out.
Well, certainly the hamlet, I think, is we have an existing character. We're trying to build on that. So that was less of conceptual and more of protecting what we have and growing it in a reasonable fashion. I like the term casual.
But the concept is far from the reality.
This one is certainly, this is a concept. As you go out there now, it's much of it is vacant, except the residential areas.
I was reading over this material the last several days, and driving here for the meeting, coming down 6 Mile, and looking at parallel parking. There's big ditches there, and you mentioned the road commission should, the next time they come through to pave or whatever, that they would take some of that. Would they take that into consideration then? And then I don't know what the easement is and all that type of thing, but when I see the concept here in the master plan, you know, I see nice parallel parking, I see sidewalks and, you know, and all the, you know, all the different shrubbery and whatnot, you know, and, you know, so it's got a long ways to go to get to that point that I, you know.
Exactly right. And that's why I said a moment ago what I did say. This area is special. It is meant to be special. It's meant to be different. It is meant to have the character that you just outlined, the character that the master plan talks about. You're fortunate because you've got a blank slate, basically, so that you can talk about the entire area and the character you want to have for this area with the design guidelines that I made reference to. So it's what you say, it is a concept, but it's a policy, it's an objective, it's a strategy. You would like to see it like this. If you didn't have these strategies and policies, which is up to you to have them or not have them, then somebody could come in and take 5 acres, 10 acres, put something small that has no relationship, and over a period of time, that's not going to be a long-term benefit to the community. Sometimes, as Rodney made reference to, you have to have areas not only ready, but you have to have the type of ready areas. The part that made reference to the research down there, you know, that's, I forget how many acres that is, but it's a good amount of acres. And a large concern that's coming in are looking for parcels about that size. They're not looking for 20-acre parcels or 40s. They're looking for 80s, 160s, etc., so that what they have can be not only put on that property, but they have expansion possibilities, they have buffering possibilities. You know, there's a lot of things, you know, like that. A couple examples. I worked with Hyundai in Superior Township for their North American technology park on Geddes Road. They've got almost 300 acres. You know, they came in with a bunch of acres and they almost doubled it because they want to expand their facility. I worked 2 years with, we both worked together, worked with Toyota out on South 23. They've got almost 1,000 acres. And when you look at their long-term plans, they have 6 phases of what they want to do. And they came there because that land was available. It was not piecemealed up with, you know, little parcels of 2 acres or 5 acres or whatever. They had a block. When you have a block, you can work with the people to accomplish the design guidelines that we're talking about here, the setbacks, the buffering, the screening, the access point, the parking, all that sort of stuff can be accomplished when you have a blank slate like you have here. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But once you start piecemealing it, it will not happen. And, you know, this area was probably affected by the economy a little bit. You know, we don't know what it's going to be the rest of this year and next year. But the planning that was done for this USD was basically putting Salem Township flag up and saying, okay, we've got an area. We want people to come into this area, not to go beyond this area, but to come in this area and present an image that we're going to be proud of. If you look along the 96 corridor, 275, 94, 23, there's not many interchanges left that have not been piecemealed. And to have an interchange on a roadway that has more cars than I-94 that you control and you have policies, goals, and strategies on, that puts you in the driver's seat. Not as dictatorial, but to put you in the driver's seat to make sure that what comes in, it may be different from this, but what comes in is going to be positive, it's going to have long-term value, it's going to abide by the goals and policies and design guidelines that you've established. You know, it's that simple. So the answer to your question is yes. You know, they want to come into something else, but not to come in with something else to throw away the concept of the entire area.
No, this is wonderful work. You know, it's like preparation. You know, they say opportunity happens when it meets up with preparation. You know, so you know it's definitely, it sets the parameters for the whole community, which is kind of nice. You know.
And for somebody to come in, it's very easy. You know, you've gone over the zoning order, so it's very easy. Come in with it's a PUD. Okay, that means area plan. Not detailed final site plans, but an area plan that is concept, that shows, okay, we want to have a use here and a use here, some parking here, stormwater here, access points. That's how we're going to handle it, guys. We'll get into the details later. That's how we're going to handle it, so you know exactly what kind of development's coming in. That's the reason for PUD. You can see the relationship of that parcel to any other parcel within that USD area. That's the real function of the PUD, not site-specific, but overall specific to the USD. And it's outlined in the ordinance, you know, it's not complex. You know, like this gentleman did this evening, come in with a free application card, hey guys, I want to build this. I know that these are the problems, what do you think about it? That's what it's all about. Then if he gets a positive feeling, he goes back and he does the area plan in a little more detail, submits it, we go through the rezoning. Then we've got the preliminary site plan, the final site plan to get all the details into this. So right up front through the PUD process, he does not have to spend a great amount of money in engineering drawings. He can come in and talk to you guys with a concept, you know, concept plan. That's what it is. So the design of this area, the implementation of this area is very straightforward.
And his concept has to fit in with the master plan.
Yes.
You know, and that's the.
Yes, or, I've got to say this because we look at all sites, you know, if somebody came in and they wanted to develop, let's say 300 acres, and it was a little bit different than this, you have the ability, not to say just, no, it's not in accordance with our plan, you can do that, perhaps you should in certain cases, but he may have something that's really not only different, but more desirable, more value, more character, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You might say, wow, that's pretty nice.
And you try to stimulate that.
Exactly, and then you change your master plan accordingly.
Sure.
Okay. Before we go any further, I'd just like to solicit and allow the public to comment or ask questions if they're, you know, directed to the point related to any concerns they might have with the way the master plan deals with these two special use areas, so that we could all understand what might be on people's minds. Okay, that's fine. Doesn't mean we're completely done. What I'd like to do, right, because the planners made 5 points here, okay, I'd just like to poll the planning commission members like we did when we went through part 8 and part 9 to see if there was any interest in following up on these 5 items that they've outlined for us, okay? And so we'll just go down them. The first one was, you know, reevaluate the urban service district subsection goals, objectives, and policies, and update the text and maps as deemed necessary. Is there anyone here that sees a need to do that? That's my question. All right. I think we're comfortable with what's there, quite honestly. The next item is review the sanitary sewer service district subsections in the USD based on changing conditions and update as necessary. I mean, is anyone there? No. We think, you know, our sense is the document's adequate the way it is, so we're okay there. Item 3 was mix of land uses in the USD north and south and such. And we talked about maybe that a little bit here. And again, I just want, is there interest in diving into that and opening that up for detailed review? Okay.
Mr. Pennington did a fine job.
I agree. Okay, so no. And then there was, now we go to the hamlet, and changing this subsection to bring the text up to date. You know, as I've read it, I haven't personally seen any issues there. Is anyone else with interest in delving into that? Okay. And then the last one was, evaluate the feasibility of integrating the Hamlet and Godferson Road urban service districts. I mean, to me, I think we don't, until something's happening, there's no sense of what an integration would do, and I don't know how you open it up and make any meaningful progress with it. So I don't, are we okay that that's not something we're actually
Was
okay?
that alluding to anything specific?
No, it was simply looking at, one of the issues was with sewer services, where does it come from? Of course, the Hamlet has a sewer plant that's underutilized. And one thought, and it was simply a thought to put out there, was the idea of possibly looking at the Hamlet providing that service, at least for part of the Godferson Road area. Further conversations with engineers involved have made that look less possible than it initially did. So I have no objection to
Is it because of the locations would be a deterrent, right, to the feasibility?
right. It's a long run.
Okay, right.
Okay, so our quick poll here suggests to not come up with any work items related to section 10. And I think we can move on then.
And if I could just one quick comment to follow up on a question about 6 Mile Road and the parking, the on-street parking and such. There has been a change from when this plan was adopted in 2009. And that is, I think it was early 2011, those state laws, state acts of 2010, I think they were actually adopted in 2011. There was a package of bills adopted called the Complete Streets legislation. It changed the game related to the relationship between the township master plan and county road commission policies. The Complete Streets legislation requires the county to at least consider the township's policy priorities related to road design as part of their plans. So if they are proposing a road repaving project or something, they have to at least consider what the township has suggested as the better design. It doesn't mean they're going to accept it, but they have to at least consider it, look at it from a cost-benefit perspective, perhaps to have discussions with the township as what compromise there might be to provide some of the elements that are proposed, but not everything. But that's significantly different from the past relationship between the township and county in that regard.
And we certainly don't want, just a bunch of cars speeding through the Hamlet, so.
They have to consider.
They have to consider it. And in fact, what I will say is that road agencies across the state have begun to be very active in this area. In fact, the Michigan Department of Transportation has come to some of the rural communities, rural downtowns that they run state highways through, and said, we want to change this, and will you work with us if we propose some changes? And they were talking about changing it to be more downtown friendly. In some cases, they've surprised the local governments with their change in attitude from what has been in the past. So I'm certainly not saying that the County Road Commission is going to be perfect and that they're going to accept on-street parking and all of these elements, but they certainly will be more receptive to looking at some of these issues.
And do we have any immediate responsibilities regarding the County Road Commission as to what our expectations are? Or, are they cognizant of what we've put together here in the master plan? Or?
That's a great question. As part of any master plan update, the County Road Commission is one of those that's on the list to receive the documents so that they can comment on it. And they are on the list to receive a copy of the plan when it's adopted. It is something where if you choose not to update the plan anyway, if we find as we go through this process there's no need to make any changes, we still may want to, in that case, send a copy of the plan to the Road Commission and say, we want to make you aware, and we could even write out a little memo, here are the sections that apply to you, so that they have an updated version of the document.
You need to be a squeaky wheel every once in a while, right?
It's always good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that concludes our discussion related to part 10. Now, the next question is we have other sections to go through in the future, and what would our recommendation be for our April meeting?
I think if I may, my suggestion would be to step back and look at parts 6 and 7. That's agricultural land use and the residential land use.
Okay. That's good, that's what we'll set up for the April meeting. Thank you. Reports of commissioners and committees. Anything to report?
If Sandy was on the historical, wait, no, that board.
Oh,
Should she-
the land
Yeah, the land
preservation.
preservation, does she need to be, do we need another representative for that?
You may need to do that, but I think the way we need to, I mean, if you can clarify for us, Gary, but I'm not close to what they've been doing.
Right now,
Pardon?
right now, they're trying to get their board together, exactly what they're gonna do moving forward. So they're they're talking about what they wanna do. Actually, they're gonna do some work, one of their charges are gonna be with the 4 tracks, helping getting that together so that it's preserved correctly. And so they're actually probably looking for other people to join that.
Okay.
Not necessarily being off the planning commission or even the board of trustees.
Yeah, I think their charter basically require a member from the planning
Right,
commission.
they
and
might,
now that
they're
this-
reviewing that and might change the ordinance on it. They're just looking at it
Mhm.
right
Oh, I understand, but so with that thought, right, I guess the question I would ask the commissioners here is there a commissioner with interest in participating in that group?
I've always been hugely interested.
Pardon?
I've always been hugely interested in that group, so
Okay.
if you need somebody on there, I'll volunteer.
All right. All right, well, I'd like to make a motion that Ms. Kelly be planning commission representative to that commission. Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Okay. And we can do it on a voice vote. And so all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. So we've handled it. Thank you. Okay. Let's go on to approval of minutes, item 10. And we should all have a copy of the draft minutes from January 27th. And I would like to make a motion that we approve those minutes as submitted. Was there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Aye. We approved those minutes. Before we go to public comment, we'll start off, I just want to make one comment. And that is in the January meeting, I drew attention to planning commission member attendance and some concerns I had, or maybe alluded to some concerns I had. And I just want people to know, because I know there was a discussion at the township board meeting, but anyway, I've had a discussion with Commissioner Can, and he and I have an agreement that we want to work together and we will communicate better with each other going forward. And that makes me a much happier person than I happened to be 2 months ago. And that's just my announcement. And I want, and based on the discussion at the township board meeting, I felt it appropriate to mention that here. Okay, public comment.
Actually, before we do it, I just had one other announcement, or report, I guess, if I could. This relates to the Land Preservation Board, and that, and also to you, and that's related to the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space plan. I just want to give an update, just actually.
Oh, thank you.
Update that's very new, because I had a conversation with the woman at the State Department of Natural Resources, the grant coordinator, who's reviewing this plan. We have had some back and forth over the last several weeks, because there appeared to be some piece of information that she wanted that we had not provided. I've never dealt with this in any other situation with these plans, but we really had trouble figuring out exactly what she wanted. And finally, this afternoon, I learned what it was, and fortunately, it's something that our clerk can easily provide. This is related to the proof of notice being provided. The state has some requirements related to notice, 30-day notice for display of the plan and such like that in a public hearing. She asked, I've learned that what she wants is a certified copy of the township board agenda for the night in December that they adopted the plan. Certified by the clerk saying, yes, this agenda was posted and on the website and posted at the hall, and of course the Open Meetings Act, and basically signed by the clerk. So you're hearing that tonight. The clerk has not heard that yet because I literally had the conversation at 20 after 5 today. So we'll be getting that final piece to her and hopefully getting that plan accepted.
That doesn't seem like an insurmountable hurdle.
No, it's not. But it's taken a long time to get to that point where we're clear on what we need to give her.
Okay. Now we're gonna go to public comment. Yes, sir.
I would like to ask someone here, or I'm sure that Don would know, about the airport over here. Why did they close to start with? I mean, I know what they told me, that the state of Michigan said it's gonna be 10,000 feet from a landfill. So Dan Howard bought the airport and closed it. No. Can you have, has the law been changed?
We really haven't looked into that at this point. That's a real basic issue to this gentleman's presentation, but we haven't looked into it permanently. We'll have to look into that to see what the history is and exactly if he can open up that airport as he talked about this evening.
See, and the reason for it was because of the birds, they interfered with the flying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Good point.
that's all.
Yep.
Yes, Ms. Hamel.
In the section that the planning commission considered tonight concerning special use areas, is the township going to state anything in the growth management plan concerning 425 agreements?
I really didn't hear that, so what?
In the section that you covered tonight, special use areas, will there be anything in the plan concerning 425 agreements? And those are agreements that the state allows between two municipalities where one municipality expands utilities into another.
I don't have any expertise in that, so I personally can't answer it. I don't know.
I can certainly say there's Act 425 it's Act 425 of 1984. It's a very short law and a very useful law in terms of intergovernmental cooperation. It's not the only one. There are actually several that could apply to any cooperation between adjoining townships in this case, related to utilities or other cooperative elements. It is an agreement between the township boards, so it is not something that would come to the planning commission. In some cases, it involves transferring land from one jurisdiction to the other, but not always. The law is very broad in that sense, and it also the laws allow temporary. They're all temporary period of time, up to 50 years generally, but it can be a temporary transfer, it can be a temporary change that runs for a certain period of time, but that all would be something that would be a board decision. So it would not typically be part of the master plan, although the master plan does set out the policies that would undergird any kind of decision like that.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? All right, that's the end of public comment, and we're now adjourned at 9:14 p.m. Thank you all.